and they found that the baby was had passed away. We are human beings caring for other human beings.
Who create the changes of the time? Who create the visions of your mind? The visions of your mind. Today?
I'm good, thank you. My name is Jordan Alexandra Davis, and the business I'm promoting today is called 0 to 2 Little Joy by Puri Skin. So my business is a brand where we've created natural skincare products for both mother and baby. The products that we have for sale at the moment, one is for mum, which is a stretch mark cream made of natural ingredients, organically sourced ingredients. And for baby, we have a baby wash, which is a soap-based wash, and a baby lotion as well. And we've got them here. So this is our baby wash, and this is called All of Me Sensitive Bath Wash. The ingredients, the main base ingredients is aloe vera and soap bark as well. So the ingredients that we've chosen to include in the whole product range are vegan, they're vegetarian friendly, they're sourced, the products themselves are made in the UK, and we've made sure that specifically for babies as well that they are skin friendly, because of course newborns and babies and young infants, they have very sensitive skin. And we also have the baby lotion as well. And the baby lotion's ingredients include grapeseed oil and coconut oil as well. So that's what we have. So myself being a midwife, I felt it was quite important to ensure that the products that we created were clean, were earth friendly, and of course made for sensitive skin. I think a lot of the products on the market today include ingredients that can cause irritation to the skin. And like I said previously, for babies and young children, it's really important, and for mothers as well, it's important that what we're introducing to our skin barriers is something that's clean, something that's not going to cause reactions or anything like that. So that was our main driving force into why we created these products. Being a midwife, one of the questions, I used to work on the postnatal ward, so I was caring for mothers who had just recently given birth. And one of the main questions that I used to receive was, what can I use on my baby's skin? Now, research has changed in recent years. So when I was training, we were told to tell mothers to use olive oil. But now that research has actually changed, and they have found that one of the components of olive oil actually can break down the skin's barriers. So ensuring that there are products that are safe, are clean for mothers and babies, we decided to come together and collaborate and find something that would be excuse me, useful for both mothers and babies. So that's how we came to make 0 to 2. I actually decided that I wanted to be a midwife from the age of 12. I really don't know what came over me. I think I initially wanted to be a pediatrician, but I remember saying to my mum, oh, pediatricians, they have to give babies injections, and that's not for me. Of course, as a midwife, I'm giving babies injections, and I'm actually trained to give the BCG injections, so that went out the window. But being a midwife, I had to attend university for 3 years to gain my Bachelor of Science Midwifery degree. So I started the training when I was 18, and I finished by the age of 21. So I've been a midwife for 6 years, but yeah, it's been a lifelong dream. The training is hard work. It is definitely, and the job itself is hard work. I think a lot with the midwifery degree, you find that the students, if you look at the scope of students that we have, they range from 18-year-olds all the way to 50, 55-year-olds. So you'll find a whole massive age range of our students. So I was a baby. I started when I was 18 years old. So immediately I was thrown into a field of caring for women who are older than me. So you have the question, how old are you? You look really young. Are you sure you're a student midwife? So you have to battle all of those things. But I think it made me quite mature in terms of, I'm obviously handling 2 lives when I'm caring for a student, and then of course as a midwife. So I faced that during the training. Of course, you see things as you go along throughout the training and when you start your job. But being a student and then going into being your own autonomous midwife, the jump is crazy. Like, you go from having a mentor, you are well supported when you start as a midwife, but you're now thinking for yourself. You have your own NMC pin, so those patients are now my patients. There's lots of things that we see as midwives. We see some saddened scenarios where women go through bereavement, and obviously you have the upsides of welcoming new life into the world. So the journey is always changing. Every day is not the same in midwifery, and that's one of the things that I love about it. I think one of the biggest things is, or one of the two biggest things, so obviously within midwifery you do have women who suffer pregnancy loss and deal with bereavement during their pregnancy, and each case or each patient that you look after that is going through this difficult time, it is hard. It is very hard looking after women in this scenario. However, we make sure that we're empathetic, we're compassionate, we're caring, and we make sure, you know, we're just there for the women. The definition of midwife is with women, so we make sure that we're with our women as they're going through these times. I think a more current issue facing maternity in the country is the staffing shortage. So that's been one of the biggest issues that we've been facing in recent years, because we're finding that we're losing our older midwives to retirement, and the younger midwives who are coming in, the job is very stressful. So we do face burnout. You'll find, I'm sure there's high levels of burnout in midwifery. So that is one of the difficult things as well, dealing with making sure that we're caring for our patients safely, taking care of ourselves as well, but also having to manage, you know, the numbers that we're looking after with such a small staff force. That is a good question. I'm trying to think. I don't think anything has caused me to want to look in a different career field, because once you're in midwifery and you've gotten deep into midwifery, you understand that it is stressful. It is stressful. I cannot stress that enough. It is difficult. But if you love it enough, you will work through it. You'll find ways to cope with what we deal with. I would say one of the most devastating times I've had in my career, I remember I was a student. I hadn't actually qualified just yet. I was in my final year, and I looked after a woman who she had planned to have her C-section on a weekday morning. But before they went in to do the C-section, the routine is that you would listen into baby's heartbeat to make sure the baby is well before obviously going into the operative procedure. And they found that the baby had passed away. So, but because of her gestation and the fact that she was obviously due to have the baby that day, she still had to go through the whole birthing process. So that was so difficult, so difficult. You're trying to manage your own emotions because you don't want to seem like you're breaking down, like you're weak, but you're also dealing with the woman and the family who obviously did not expect this at all, and it's such a shock. So that was devastating. I would say there's so many joys of midwifery. One, the people that I've come across, being friends that I've made in my career from my training. One of my best friends, I met her as we started the training, so we've been friends for almost 10 years. And then the friends that I've met across the 10 years that I've been training and working, so that's colleagues and also the patients that I've met. You always have certain patients who stick in your head, the ones that you've cared for along the way. So that is one aspect that is really beautiful. Other aspects, other joys of the job, obviously bringing new life into the world. That's one of the biggest rewarding things that you could do as a midwife, supporting women and their partners to become parents watching how they bond with this new life, how they care for the baby, and helping them, especially if they're first time and they have no idea. You see them day by day when they're in the hospital and at home, how they go from strength to strength looking after their newborn. What else? There is so many things. When you get something right, you know, when you tackle a shift that has been absolutely crazy, but you made it through. I was there from 7:45 till 8. You go home and you feel like, okay, I've done that day. I've accomplished that shift. I managed to discharge people home. I gave people the best care I could. So there's so many I could list off. Good question again. Again, the thing that comes to the top of my head is the staffing. Protect your staff is so important. I mean, I know managers have to work in, you know, we all are professionals, and they have to meet targets, they have to meet criteria, they have to tick boxes. But I think managers, the government need to realize that the people on the shop floor, as we call it, the wards, the clinical areas, we are human beings, caring for other human beings. So we need to be protected. We need to make sure, they need to make sure that we're okay. Because if I'm not okay as a midwife doing a 12-hour shift, how am I supposed to care for the 8 or 9 women I might have on the postnatal ward plus their babies? Yeah, so protecting the staff will be the number one thing, and there are a lot of things that they could do, but that is the main thing. So the pandemic, when that hit, that was so crazy. So at that time I was working on the postnatal ward, and it was very surreal. I remember the week that we went into lockdown, I was doing a night shift going into the day that Boris Johnson announced that we was going into lockdown, and I believe that's the day that I actually caught COVID from one of my students as well. And that is because, did the government take it seriously? Because obviously there were talks of COVID in the background, but at that time we had masks, we didn't really know what was happening, and then it just hit us. So COVID affected my ward in the sense that I have the antenatal ward mixed with the postnatal, so that we have women who are in early labor, and unfortunately those women at that time during the peak of the pandemic could not have their birthing partners with them at all, so they were in early labor by themselves, and it was sad to see women just in the corridor. We obviously support our women regardless, but where a birthing partner will be with that woman or birthing person while they're in early labor to add little bits of support, we had to make sure that we were there for these women. You know, if there's 4 early laborers, I had to dot between 4 early laborers to make sure that they're all okay. Do they need painkillers? We would do that anyway, but if you imagine a birthing partner would be able to mop someone's brow, give them the glass of water, we had to make sure that we were there. So it stretched us even more, and of course it was hard for a woman who is in the early stages of labor, which is probably, some might disagree, can be the most difficult part of the labor, because your body is starting to get into active labor. It's tiring. We tell you to move around, but all you want to do is just rest to regain your energy. And the women didn't have birthing, they didn't have their mother or their father or their sister or their husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend to talk to. So, but part of that, they were able to talk to the women, to their neighbours who was in the beds next to them. So something positive did come out of it. The women were able to share their experiences. But we had a lot of COVID women. I work in a hospital where there was a lot of COVID patients. We saw them being transported through the corridors, and it was scary. It was very scary. The anxiety that I had going into work and coming home from work was through the roof, but thankfully we made it through, fingers crossed, the peak of the pandemic. First off, I'm going to say it's due to systemic racism, systemic bias, prejudice. I'm not talking specifically my own trust, but nationally throughout the NHS, there has to be a reason why. Those statistics are not numbers that they have been plucked out of thin air. It's showing us an ugly truth that there are serious issues going on within the healthcare settings and within the healthcare that is being provided to Black women. But I would say that's probably the number one reason: systemic racism, bias, prejudice, language barriers as well. We need to think about culturally ensuring if our women are not able to understand what the healthcare provider's saying. Something very simple, there might be a miscommunication. For instance, if you're telling a woman that she needs to come into the hospital because XYZ, if there's a language barrier, she might not understand that. And that woman may sit at home thinking everything's absolutely fine when something is actually not right with herself or her unborn child. So it's important that we look out for the women who are vulnerable in terms of language, culture as well. So I would say those are the two main reasons. When I say systemic racism, so for example, if you look at the healthcare professionals that are on the shop floors, so you've got midwives. I work in a diverse hospital trust, which I'm very thankful for. Many of us are Black and brown or European. We come from different countries all around the world. If you go higher up the hierarchy in the hospitals around the country, you might not see as many people who look like me higher up in directors. Luckily, in my own hospital, we have managers, Black women, directors, managers, team leaders, which is really inspiring. But in general, as you go higher up the hierarchy, you might not see Black women or Black men. That goes for many professions, not just midwifery or healthcare. Systemic racism. If I go back, like say 19th century, there was the notion that Black women feel less pain. And there have been studies done more recently, I'm not too sure about in the UK, but in America, where they've asked people about their what they feel about Black people's pain thresholds, and they actually think that Black people can tolerate more pain than our white counterparts. How that makes sense is each their own opinion. However, we know that person who was doing anesthetic trials on Black women, enslaved Black women, back in the 19th century, it obviously wasn't true, but those notions have been passed down. So where I say bias and prejudice and racism, we hear the term that Black women are strong. Now, it's all well and good that being a compliment, but when it comes to healthcare, if you say, oh yeah, Black women are strong, oh, she doesn't need pain relief, she's fine, she's saying that she's in pain, but actually early labor, she's fine. We must listen to what these women are telling us, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their age, gender, assignment, disability. We must treat everyone equal. Labor is a tough time on a woman's body, and if a woman says she's in pain, we have to listen to her and understand and help her with that pain if she wants help. So that's where my opinion of systemic racism, bias, prejudice comes from. I believe conversations need to be had 100%. We need to be real. We need to be honest. The people who work higher up, the directors of the hospitals where they're having incidents regarding Black and brown women, Black women more specifically, conversations need to be had. We shouldn't be afraid to have a conversation about racism in healthcare. People will disagree and say, oh, I'm not racist, but it's okay to say you're not a racist, but you need to be anti-racist. You need to be against racism, point blank, period. And we need to have conversations and understand where, you know, someone might say something and they'll feel, oh, that's not racist, but what you actually said was a microaggression. It wasn't acceptable what you said to that black woman. You need to listen to black patients as well. I think one of the things with our people is that we feel that we might not get taken as seriously with healthcare. That's not just, that's in general. GPs, when you go to your GP, you know, you feel rushed. They're not listening to what they tell you. It's so important, especially in pregnancy, that you feel you have time as a patient to sit down and speak to your midwife or your obstetrician. So yeah, we need to be listening to our patients. We need to understand what are the issues. Why do women feel like they can't raise their concerns to the healthcare professionals? They sit back and let certain, it might be health concerns, fester, and then until the last minute when things can't be reversed. So definitely conversations need to be had. We can't be covering up with guidelines. The NICE guidelines came out last year regarding induction of labor for women who are 39 weeks pregnant. Because of the statistics regarding black women, they've created that guideline. I've said it before, I feel like that's just trying to paper over the crack. Just take apart the foundation and why is that the statistic? We need to sit down and look at it. So that's what they need to start doing. So I have a daughter. She is 5 months old, 5.5 months old now. And she was born in August of 2021. My pregnancy, for the most part, was smooth sailing. Again, I feel I'm fortunate enough as a black woman who is a midwife, who was able to obviously just attend my appointments while I was at work, see my colleagues. I was able to say, I want to see this colleague who wants to do my checkups, etc., etc. So I had that advantage, but the pregnancy was pretty much smooth sailing until I got to the 3rd trimester, where I had 2 hospital admissions because I was having contractions from about 32 weeks, which is not normal. But luckily baby stayed inside. She cooked until 37 weeks and then I had her just before I turned 38 weeks. So the pregnancy itself was, I would say, it was absolutely fine. You know, it was bumpy towards the end, but all was well. Labor and childbirth, to me, I would actually do it again and again and again if my experience was like that. It was amazing. Again, I know that I'm awarded the fact that I'm a midwife myself, so I was able to pick my midwives who happen to be my 2 best friends, who I work with as well. So in that sense, I was lucky and blessed, but I feel like the whole experience, it was amazing. Yeah, it was really, really good. I really enjoyed, I wouldn't say I enjoyed labor because it was painful, but as a whole, it was perfect for me. Woo! Motherhood is honestly the best. It's the best job. I love midwifery, but motherhood trumps that by far. Watching her grow from the tiny infant that she was to a 5-month-old is so crazy how time flies when you have a child. It's hard. Many people said to me, or I think they still think, oh yeah, you're a midwife, so you'll figure it out, breastfeeding, you know, looking after her. Midwifery has no correlation to how you're going to be as a mother. I can say that confidently. It's hard. You need sleep. I don't think as a midwife myself, like I said, I've been a midwife for 6 years. you don't understand how much sleep a mother and a father or parents or caregivers need to take care of a child, because you extremely feel it, especially in the first 12 weeks. I felt like I was always drained. After she turned 3 months, it was like a different chapter. Like, I knew why she was crying, etc., etc. So overall, it's been a really, really good learning experience. Black women who are pregnant, currently, the advice that I would give is, or pregnant or about to go into labor or birth, speak up to family and friends, to your healthcare providers, whether that be your GP, your midwife, your obstetrician. If you're not happy with your care, or if you feel something is not right, we need to be advocates for ourselves, because especially with those statistics that we've spoken about, we need to make sure that if we're not our own voice, that we have someone who can be a voice for us. More specifically, I would say in birth, in your labor and birth, make sure that you have someone who can be that voice for you. Luckily, I had my mum and my partner as well. They knew the birth plan that I wanted, so when I asked for epidural, even though in my head at the beginning I was like, oh, I'll just wait and see, they said, are you sure? So they made sure that they were advocating for me, and I wasn't being forced to have something that I didn't need to or didn't want to have in that moment. So yeah, make sure you're your own advocate, or you have someone who can be. Take care of yourself, take your vitamins, stay hydrated. I wasn't the greatest patient myself, but make sure you have your vitamins, you're hydrated, stay as active as you can, because that's going to benefit you so much when you go into labor and you deliver. For new mums, the same thing. Vitamins, stay well hydrated, especially if you're breastfeeding. It honestly, your water intake directly affects your milk supply, so make sure you do that. For new mums, and while you're pregnant as well, make sure you have a village. I'm surrounded by family, friends who I can speak to, who look after us, who make sure that we're fed, who check in. So it's so important. It doesn't have to be family. It could be a community of friends. It could be a community of new mums that you've met through forums or apps. But just make sure that you have people that you can turn to when you need to. We have here, our range is called 0 to 2 Little Joy by Puri Skin, and the range is, we've got the Baba and we've got Mama, so mummy and baby items. So for mum, we've got a stretch mark. I don't have it here, but you can find it on the website at puriskin.co.uk. Stretch mark cream, obviously self-explanatory, but you can use it in pregnancy and post as well, postnatally as well. For baby, we have got our lotion and we've got the baby wash as well. And you just follow the instructions. We advise that you use it after 6 weeks, so you give baby time to build up their barrier around their skin, and then you can start using our products. Again, natural, vegan, curated with babies and mums in mind for sensitive skin as well. And yeah, you can find these at puriskin.co.uk.